My name is Paul Harper, Paulharper, and I'm an attorney here in town.
My name is Kate Canterbury, spelled Kate and then Canterbury, and I am self-employed.
Hi, I'm Aziza Rashid, Azizarashid, and I'm also self-employed and just lifelong Missouri resident.
Annabelle Simmons, Annabelle. Simmons is Simmons, and I'm retired.
I'm Bryce Beal, Brycebeal, and I'm an attorney in Jeff City.
I'm Anthony Lupo, Anthony Lupo, but a lot of people know me as Tony, and I'm a professor at the University of Missouri.
All right, let's jump right in. Who are you planning to vote for in the upcoming presidential election?
Well, I plan on voting for Harris Walz. I think that their policies are best for America.
I'll be voting for Kamala Harris. I feel like we need a change, and she's going to bring that change, and I feel that she's really strong on the issues I care most about.
I am undecided at the moment. I will probably make the decision when I walk up to the polling booth.
And I am voting for Harris Walz.
And why?
Because I'm a Republican, but I've been one of those never Trump Republicans for 2015, 2017, and this, I'm a never Trumper.
I'll be voting for Trump and Vance. I think their policies just align more closely with what I believe in, and especially J.D. Vance's, life story of coming from, nothing and then working his way through law school, just something that I really resonate with and speaks to me.
I plan to vote for Donald Trump, and the reasons are the economy was a little better under him, at least for me and my household, and the world was relatively stable and calm as he was taking care of foreign policy. So.
I wanted to ask, what's changed the most in this election cycle? How does it differ from the last presidential one in 2020?
Go ahead, you go first.
I would say that for me in 2020, my vote was more of a reaction to a lot of the discord and ugliness that Trump had brought to our country. And I was voting more against Trump than I necessarily was for President Biden. But this time I'm really excited about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as well. I think that they're both coming from the middle class. They understand what people like me and my family are going through. I think that, we need a change in this country. We need a commitment to what makes us strong, which is our public education system, and really making sure that people have a chance to rise up.
Tony, what were you going to say?
Well, the election of 2024 looks extremely different. I might be the oldest one here, but I've been through several election cycles, and 2020 was very different because Biden did not get out a lot in the campaign trail. We had COVID, and now you've got 2024 where we've replaced a candidate, a major party candidate. We've had a candidate that's been attempted to be assassinated twice. It's almost unreal.
Who has fears about this particular election? We have seen an attempted assassination twice. There seems to be a lot of misinformation, even some fear mongering. So who has fears about this particular election? Can you explain why, Annabelle?
The fear that I have is that people will not go out to vote, because a lot of people go on television and they'll say, I'm donating millions of dollars to Trump. I'm going to donate. People don't realize as much as you donate, you still only have one vote. So I feel that the people that are out there saying, I'm donating 200 million, 75 million, whatever, they're trying to scare people to stay home.
Okay. Any other fears, especially in a time of war?
I have fears, regardless of which candidate wins. Basically, as a visible Muslim, I have fears from when Trump was president and the Muslim ban and the effects that it had, not necessarily particularly on me. I am a naturalized citizen and have lived all my life in Missouri, but those around me and many people that I know, and obviously with everything happening overseas in the Middle East region, I have fears and concerns, regardless of either candidate coming in, because neither one has shown, for lack of a better word, care and concern as majority of people that I see have for the sanctity of human life, regardless of where that life is. And so that concerns me and fears me, because I see more of an emphasis on military buildup, on filling up the pockets of those sort of companies, and not having more concern about domestically, on education, on healthcare, on just so many issues, the unhoused population, housing, all of those things. So I'm fearful that, again, as all the attention seems to be overseas, there will be less and less attention here at home, and I think it's vitally important that we pay more attention here at home and focus more on the sanctity of life overseas.
Now, you said you were still undecided. So will anything change for you, or are you hoping something will change between now and election day to help you sway one way or the other?
So I say I'm undecided, but in a way, I probably am decided, in that I know in Missouri, because it's an electoral college process, the votes in Missouri are most likely going to go to Trump, just based on how our system is. So my vote is not necessarily going to make a difference one way or the other. I for sure definitely was not going to vote for Trump. I had a little bit more hope when Harris came into the position, but once I saw how she reacted to Palestinian American voices and even U.S. citizens overseas, regardless of their ethnic background, I just lost hope and interest there. But I will probably vote down the ballot and probably leave the presidential option just blank at this point. If I was to walk in today, that's how I feel right now.
Paul or Kate, I do wonder, you guys who plan to vote for the Harris-Walz ticket in Missouri, do you think those votes do make a difference?
I would say absolutely, because what I'm concerned about is I don't even know how to put it, because it's so disappointing how former President Trump has used this rhetoric to talk about his political enemies, and how he wants to use the justice system to go after them. And election workers being scared to go to work. I heard a whole story on Arizona had to up all their security and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I feel like it's very important that everyone that believes that Harris should be president needs to vote for that ticket, because the popular vote, although unfortunately it doesn't count, I wish the Electoral College would be abolished. We need to show that this is what the will of the American people is.
I do wonder, Bryce or Tony, why do those Trump votes still matter in Missouri, in a state that he is projected to win by a very large margin?
Well, as was mentioned over on the other side here, the national popular vote does mean something, and I think the national popular vote is still up in the air, and of course that can give legitimacy to the winner. So having the popular vote would be a good thing.
How much does, I'm sorry, Annabelle, did you?
I was going to say that the Harris-Walz team has been saying that they are going to represent everybody, no matter who voted for them. So that's why I'm voting for Harris-Walz.
But they won't campaign here in Missouri.
They
I do
don't
wonder.
need to.
They don't need to?
No.
Does anyone disagree with that?
I think it's more important in Missouri. I appreciate talking about voting down the ballot because, let's be honest, the policies that really affect our lives are those made by our state and by our local government. I actually appreciate that that gives so much more attention to our candidates that are here. You know, the candidates that are running for governor, the candidates who are even running for our local representative. I would rather that those candidates get the spotlight here in Missouri because those are the people who are making the policies that affect our daily lives.
Yeah, I agree with Kate. I mean, the big national ticket sucks up all the energy, and here in Missouri, I mean, we're seeing all of our local people. We're seeing them. You know, they were all at the parades. We can actually talk with them, and you're covering them because the presidential candidates aren't here. So we're getting more of that. And you know, my focus is always on the local because that affects us the most, and we're seeing more of that coverage now.
Speaking of local, we know that sports betting will also be on the ticket. Does anyone have a thought in regards to Missouri? For, against?
I hate to take up all of the questions.
When you have such good answers.
I was like, you have some things to say. That's
Studying this. And the sports betting, I remember when they said that the lottery was going to go for the schools. It's not enough. They're just, when they put the lottery money to the schools, you know what they do? They take the money from our taxes away from the schools. So the schools are not getting any more money because of the lottery. So I'm thinking the same thing is going to happen with the sports betting. My husband is against me, but that's what I feel.
And that's something we can agree on.
I will note on that front too, the signature gathering movement for the sports betting, I think they kind of misled a lot in the way that they were trying to convince voters to sign the petition because of exactly that. Like, you know, a lot of times what will happen is the money does go into the schooling fund, but then it's withdrawn from back into general revenue, an equal amount. It's just like that dollar's getting directed. But so when they were out collecting money and saying, oh, well, this is like going to go to like improve our schools, that seems a little dishonest to me. I don't have a strong position on whether sports betting should be allowed or not. I think economically it makes sense, but it doesn't matter a whole lot to me in my household. But I think that, you know, that kind of misleading voters and gathering the signatures for the petition was an issue with this particular referendum.
Absolutely.
And I think that just highlights that a lot of the amendments and propositions, the way they're worded, it's meant to confuse you and think, okay, I should vote yes, when actually you probably want to vote no on something because it goes against your views. So that deceptiveness I don't appreciate every election year because you're really taking the voter for granted. You're not feeling that they are smart enough to know any better. And in many cases, unfortunately, a lot of voters are not as privileged as maybe some of us are, that we have the time and the education to go and understand these propositions and amendments. And so then things that maybe should not get passed. And so that's a huge, in the whole election process, besides the candidates, that's also, I think, a big problem.
How are you finding doing some of the homework and the research? Is it tough to decipher some of the misinformation, to find what you're looking for to help you vote?
It's there.
Because you said you did some research, but how do you know whether or not it's what you're reading it's not slanted one way or the other? I mean, are you able to, is it confusing when you're looking for it? Are you able to decipher what looks like misinformation, what could be truthful? Because like you said, some of the language can be or appear to be deceptive. So how do you manage in that study, in that research part?
This is not the sports betting, but it's the betting for the Osage River Casino. What a joke. Because I was thinking when I saw Osage, I said, yes, for the Osage Nation. Because I know that they wanted a casino in the Bagnell Dam area. Matter of fact, I drove by it. They've been trying to get it going. And I thought, okay, vote yes. But then I found out that this Osage River casino is completely different. So if you read it without my thinking, without assuming that it's for the Osage Nation, you think that it's for the Osage Nation, but it's not for the Osage Nation, it's competition for the Osage Nation. And if this passes, then the Osage Nation will not get their casino passed.
And this was something you've been able to find
Research,
real
yes.
information
Yes.
on.
I really try to rely on as nonpartisan, non-groups. The League of Women Voters voter guide is a huge help, I think, to a lot of people because there is a lot of deceptive information out there, and I'm sure everyone else is getting numerous flyers in their mailboxes from people, and so I like to go to sources like the local news and groups like the League of Women Voters who are devoted to really getting nonpartisan, just factual information out to people.
Yeah, I agree with Kate on that, because if you go to the candidates or to the folks that are backing up these amendments and propositions, you're just hearing one side. So it's helpful to have like the Missourian or League of Women Voters having their voters guide. But at the same time, there's so much information, you feel overwhelmed at times, and you're just like, I don't know, I'll just pick something.
I enjoy researching for these things, using the local news, newspaper, radio, as you all have said. But I also like listening to both sides, the partisan sides, because that gives me a chance to see why people are supporting something. And that helps me to crystallize a decision better. But it only works good if you listen to both sides. If you listen to one side, you're always going to be voting that way. But for example, there's some of these amendments that I think some of us here could agree on. So,
Tony, I kind of want to follow up on that. Our candidates, both on the national ticket and also here statewide and locally, are they focusing their campaigns on the issues, or is it coming across as something different?
oh, on the national level, it's coming across as personal attack here, personal attack there, little petty issue here, little petty issue there. Some of the biggest issues that are confronting us, okay, the budget, the deficit, that could tank our entire economy if we don't play those cards right. The war in Russia, I mean, if we push, we're into a war we don't understand. We don't understand the history of that region. We don't understand the players, and yet we're trying to manage that war somehow, and we may end up pushing us into a more major war, and that's the one thing I worry about.
Is there anyone else who wants to see the presidential campaign more issues-driven?
Well, I guess I do feel like the information I've been getting has been pretty issue-driven. It's interesting when people watch the debates, they're always like, well, they weren't talking about the issues. I'm like, you have to listen to what they're saying because there are very specific things people bring up, and you have to bring away the scare tactics, put that aside, put aside, like you're saying, the personal attacks. I think that they've happened on both sides. Put this aside and listen to what these people who want to lead our country really believe in.
How much stock do you all put in the ads that you see, because they can be pretty they can be pretty rough? Do the ads help you kind of make a decision, or do you do your homework based on those ads to fact check or anything like that?
For me, the ads are just noise. I don't pay attention to them at all. The flyers that I get in the mail half the time, my trash can is between my mailbox and my garage, and it doesn't even make it into my house a lot of the time, to be honest with you. We get so many flyers that it's just impossible to read them, and quite frankly, a lot of them are deceptive.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they're just saying what they think you might want to hear, more so than focusing on this. I would like to know, and I think a lot of people would like to know, what will you practically do in regards to the issue? I don't want you to be sugarcoating and, trying to make it all sweet and nice for me. I want to know, once you step into office, what are you doing that's going to benefit me, especially on the local level. On the national level, it's just so far off. But the local level, I want to know, because that affects me on a daily basis.
Does anyone feel like the ads or the flyers are helpful at all?
Well, so I don't think they sway me that much, but I will say, I think we've kind of discussed this a little bit already. The folks sitting here are probably more engaged and a little bit more educated on voting than the average person, just because we're here. So therefore, we're like more active than half the country, because only half of us vote anyway. And so I think for the folks who will vote but aren't as engaged and aren't taking the time to do the research and whatnot, I think it does sway those people, because there's a lot of research into elections that says just name identification is how a lot of people will vote. And so I think it may not sway us, but I think the general electorate and folks that I've talked to, it does sway a good number of people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just see the vote yes or vote no, or whoever names they see the most. They're probably election day, just that's what's clicking and that's what we're going to tick off, which is unfortunate in many ways, because you're not getting an educated vote, and you may be harming not just yourself but those around you by doing that.
One of the local issues that's also a national issue in the ads, but the local issue I was thinking about was the abortion rights. And I feel that it's between a woman and God. People are going, oh, it's between the woman and her doctor. No, it's between that woman and God, nobody else, nobody's business. Oh, isn't that a campaign slogan?
Well, I'd say I don't believe in God, so it's definitely between me and my doctor.
Okay.
But I do feel like Amendment 3 has been some of the things I've seen the most deceptive practices out there. I think, like, if you are on Facebook, there's so much misinformation on Facebook and the groups. Someone was like, well, they're going to be able to, give abortions at school. And I was like, my kid can't even take an aspirin at school. And she's 17. They're definitely not going to let her have an abortion at school. And I think it's like when we get into these scare tactics and these insults, that's when the real information gets so lost. And as the wording on these amendments is just not great. I wish they were set by a bipartisan panel. If we're going to have this process, I wish it was just a lot better.
Yeah, and it's having social media out there, having a way to get information, so many different formats, that makes it so much more difficult too, because one person may be getting all their information from Facebook, or somebody else from Instagram, or somebody else from mainstream media, or somebody else from fringe media, and so you're not getting cohesive, kind of balanced information. You're getting what is being catered to what you think is right. And so I feel like as we have progressed through the election process, not just now, but over the years, that's just become more intense, and I don't see that dying away unless rules and regulations are put in place. But again, based on how our parties are moving forward, I don't see that happening in the near future.
Just on that point too, with speaking about social media and whatnot and misinformation, in 2020 there was federal court findings that said that the Biden administration colluded with big tech social media platforms to censor a lot of information. Whether you agree with the information or disagree with it, the government getting involved like that is completely in the face of the First Amendment. And so how do we know that that's not going on behind the scenes now in the 2024 election, where the Biden administration is applying undue pressure to whatever social media platform, saying if you don't take down the stuff that we don't like, then we're going to repeal the protections that you have in the law. So
Well, that case was actually about hate speech online, which I think we can all agree should not be online. And I think the problem is that we feel like social media is the news. I was actually listening to NPR, which a lot of people feel is biased. It was a story about X, formerly Twitter, and how Elon Musk actually has the algorithms to push his post to everyone who's on that platform, whether you follow him or not. And he's a very outspoken supporter of former President Trump. So at what point do we say that that's misusing a platform that many people consider to be a news source? So we get into these really tricky issues when it comes to social media.
You're right, people are getting, I mean, just this morning when I was talking to someone from jury duty, she told me, I don't watch the news much. I have it right there on my phone. So yeah, I mean, and so many people are getting it right there.
I will just clarify, the case I'm talking about was not about hate speech. It was the Biden administration requiring Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, you name it, social media platforms to take down information on the Hunter Biden laptop story, on COVID, things like that. And there are federal court findings out of one of the federal district courts in Texas, and then of course the Sixth Circuit reviewing that on appeal that found explicitly that this happened.
I think that's a problem with judicial bias. This is another problem that's happened. I mean, it's kind of like in the debate that was online, like we need a little fact check person to come up all the time. It should be like a pop-up videos that they had. Is anyone old enough to remember those? But pop-up facts, all the things that are said. I personally would appreciate that.
So this is interesting to me, though. We have two people who disagree. You two are sitting next to each other. It's civil. Aziza, you brought up, though, that when people are going on these sites, and it's not even just social media, a lot of it is the broadcast news that they receive now, it's catered to the viewpoint they agree with. How do we get people to engage with other folks who they might not see eye to eye with on candidates on issues?
I've noticed that the broadcast news doesn't do bias. Like, tell me your name again. Evie. I've seen her on TV almost every day, and she doesn't get into what she likes. She just reads the news. She just puts it out there, and then there's people on other stations. I watch NBC, CBS, and ABC. So they do the same thing. They just put the news out there, whatever you want, just figure it out yourself. And they don't get biased on the broadcast networks. It's when you go to a Fox, MSNBC, or those other
Cable.
that you get the bias. So the regular broadcast networks don't bias. They just are very, very equal.
Whenever I'm, talking about local issues and things like that, I actually think we all agree on more things than anybody ever gives us credit for. I think all of us in this room could talk education, and our focus would be let's get our kids' test scores up. Let's have a safe school for everybody. I think we'd actually agree on a lot of the solutions too. Nobody talks about that. We're all about, us versus them, but it's really us. And especially whenever we're talking local issues and talking to people around the community, we agree on so much stuff, and I don't think anybody gives us credit for that.
I will say I 100% agree with that. No matter if it's obvious you and I disagree on a lot of things politically, right? But at the end of the day, we all want what's best for the country. It's just we have different opinions on how we get there and what those things are. But we all are just trying to do what's best and push the country in a way that we see is best for the most people. And so, I think if we could get down to that and say, this is really about the people and why do we have these, divides, but when really hey, this is my idea, how can we, make it work for everyone and just make the country a better place to be? That's what we're all really interested in.
I will say I agree with Paul and Bryce, and I respectfully disagree with Annabelle, which is a little unusual because Annabelle and I get along. But I feel like the so-called mainstream media, the CBS, the NBC, the ABC, the CNN, all of those, I think a lot of people don't realize or know that the corporations or the ownership behind them do bias the news that they put out. We may not see that at a local level, although there are some local stations that also have that behind them. And so I think, if people are constantly used to seeing the mainstream media and don't see the other media or do a little kind of background research knowledge, then they're just going to assume that this is non-biased news. But unfortunately, I don't think there is anything as being unbiased. I think those views do come out.
And that's the thing. All of us here, from what I'm hearing, do their research and look at both sides and evaluate. And in a representative democracy, that onus is on you, the voter. You know, it's not on the media. It's not, I mean, the media bias is going to be there. It always has been since day one of the country. It's up to us as the voters. And I don't know, some people may say that our politics is so divided, and they might point their fingers at the politicians. I take a different view of that. I think that the politics reflects us, unfortunately, not necessarily us in this room, but it reflects the population where we're at, unfortunately, and not a lot of people do their homework.
But I did want to ask you as well, because I know you are elected to the school board right now, which isn't why you're here. And Tony, I know you had worked with the Boone County Republicans, which isn't why you're here. But I'm sure in the roles you served and serve in this organization, you have people who come to you who disagree. And as an elected official, I'm sure, and even though you weren't elected, I'm sure people come to the party with disagreement. How do you hear those people out, and how do you deal with those people in those roles?
You know, whenever it comes to education issues, focus on what's the best practice. What is the research-based, evidence-based right thing to do? Is there one? And move from there. Usually, we can agree on a lot of things. You know, I frequent coffee houses all over the city, talking to people. I don't know what their politics are a lot of the time because we're talking education. When we're talking education, we're not talking politics. We're talking about kids. We're talking about safety. We're talking about security. We're talking about improving test scores. We're talking about all of those things. We're not talking about this nonsense that they talk about on the national level that we saw in the debates. We're talking about our kids. It's so different than the national politics.
And I think that's the one important thing about voting down the ballot. You can be in contact with your local officials. I can go to Paul and say, this is, you know, my problem or issue, and how can you resolve this, or how can you at least focus on this? On the national level, you're just, you know, unless you have, quite honestly, the financial backing or the power, it seems it's money or power that will get you the ear at the national level. But at the local level, again, like they all said, we're all basically on the same viewpoint. We all have the same basic needs and desires, that we all just want to see each other living well, and our children especially.
Tony, did you experience that even as associated with a partisan political party here locally?
Yeah, I mean, we even get disagreements even within our own party. But, you know, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so it's best to listen and process and talk it out.
As far as the local level, people have been saying, you hear it when you go to the gym, when you go to the store, oh, I'm voting because of economics. Well, where were you in 2020 when you go to the grocery store and all of a sudden the prices are like 3 and 4 times what they used to be? This was 2020, and people said, well, when Trump was in office, the prices were lowered. No, they weren't. They were high. He was there until the end of close to the end of 2020. So in June, July, August, when the prices were inflated, price gouging, then don't you know that he could have done something about that at the time? But no, they wait until now to say, well, it was all Biden's fault. No, it wasn't. It was because people, the stores, they saw an opportunity to gouge us, and they did it.
I would say I'm much more excited about local elections than I am any other elections. Having someone like Paul on the school board, that's someone that he's ready to meet and talk to any parent or really anyone that is interested in our schools, because how we educate affects everyone. You know, I don't think people think about how the students and how they're educated today, those are going to be the doctors taking care of us when we're older. So it's like, that's the thing that we really need to invest in. You know, who are our local officials? Who's, you know, overseeing the money for our county? Who's, you know, making the use of the funds when it comes in? These are the things that affect our daily lives, and I wish more people voted in more elections, and I wish more people cared about local elections.
One of the things that I got involved with locally, but this is kind of state, was when one of my friends told me that the legislators in Jefferson City had some new proposals. I said, okay, what does it mean? She says, I hadn't read it. So I said, okay, let me just read it. And I said, the first one that you told me about, it means that the definition of a parent is anybody who says that they're a parent. You don't have to have a child. Your child could have been your child in maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. The definition has been changed from a child in school to anybody that says that they're a parent. That was the first thing that got me. Then the next one that she gave me, it said if a person who's a parent gets the information from a child that a teacher has said something that they didn't like. It might be a political, that the parent doesn't like this. Then they wanted to have an electronic form online that they could fill out and press submit, and it would go to that local school board. And it was up to the school board. This was written, it was in Jefferson City. They're making these proposals. They said you can submit it, and it goes to the local school board, and if the school board doesn't answer you, and I think they gave them 10 days, then they would give them 10 more days, so a total of 20 days to give you an answer. And I said, so what? And I kept reading and reading and reading. Okay, bottom line, if they didn't answer you within that time period, then they owe you $1,000. And the $1,000 would be split between the person that submitted the form, 20%, and the charter school that the person would like that 80% to go to. I said, that's highway robbery. They think that they can steal my tax money. When I pay my taxes, and our taxes are high in Missouri, so when I pay my taxes, I want the tax money to go for the betterment of the schools. So the proposal was a roundabout way to have a license to steal. And I said, okay, I gotta stop this. So I found out that when they were having their meeting, and it was a date in February, and I hate driving in the cold weather, but I drove down to Jefferson City to voice my opinion. There was a sign on the door, postponed. Oh my gosh, I had to be there before 9 o'clock in the morning, and an hour for me, I drive slow. So for me, from Columbia down there, find a parking place, walk across, what a waste of time. So then I found out that the next day that they're postponing it to was another day. I said, oh, okay, here I go again. And I got some other folks to come with me, and we carpooled. Get down there again, postponed. So it's like our legislators are trying to frustrate us. So I don't know what to do.
I know we're getting close to 7, so I got to get this in before, and that's the perfect segue because I did want to ask about frustration. November 5th is going to happen, and then the next day will be Wednesday, November 6th. We will have another day after that, but there are going to be a lot of people in our community, in our state, in our country who are upset. How do we move on?
I mean, it would be nice if we could just move on like this, where people that have differences of opinions could just hear each other out, agree to disagree respectfully. But unfortunately, the day after, I think hopefully we won't see, but I'm sure we will see people upset and showing that upsetness either way, regardless of who wins presidential election. I'm not so sure that we'll see as much disheartenment or frustration maybe on a local level, but I feel like on a national level it might be something to be cautious about.
I mean, I'm a lifelong Democrat who grew up in Texas and lives in Missouri, so I'm used to disappointment. Yeah, sure. I think that really, I hate to go local, but it really, if you really put your time into thinking about local people and who you're voting for on that, I think you feel more invested and you feel more invested in the outcome, because whoever becomes president, it'll set a tenor for the country, and I hope we can avoid what happened on January 6th either way. But if you're invested in what's happening here in our state and what's happening here in Boone County, you're going to feel more like you made a difference.
And I think too, if you do disagree, at least on the local level, if the person you voted for wasn't chosen but the other person was, well, maybe you make a connection there and still make the effort to talk to them and express your views and your concerns, and hopefully they're still open to listening. I think that's a lot more accessible on a local level than trying to, again, reach on a national level.
Yeah, I will say, like the nature of elections is that 50% of people are going to be upset, like no matter how it goes. So I just hope that, the next day, the people who the election doesn't go their way can use that feeling to drive themselves in the future to become more engaged, to push for community members, and whether you agree with someone or not, to get more people involved in the political process, because I think it's been mentioned a couple times, but voter turnout is just abysmal. We have maybe 50% in a big election year, but if you look at the local level, like Ashland had a municipal election back in April, and I want to say the turnout was something less than a third. It was I want to say 14, yeah. So I mean, that's that's horrible when only 1 in 10 people pretty much are deciding your local politics, which like's been said, really is what people see more in the day-to-day policy. Maybe the economy affects you more, and that's kind of at a national level. But when it comes to the policies of like what's going on in your town and that kind of stuff, that's decided a lot in these local elections that people just don't show up for. So use that feeling, remember how you feel, and get people out and to vote next time.
I think it's also generational too. Younger generations are probably more frustrated at the fact that what does it matter? Does my vote really make a difference? Whereas those of us that are older and have been through elections, have seen the process and have engaged in the process, I think we're a little bit more hopeful, although I'll admit I have my moments of frustration too and go, does it really matter? But I do know being engaged with local politicians does make a difference, even if not immediately, maybe further down the line.
As far as generational, when I was young and the Nixon administration was going on, and my mother told me that the president is your friend, so I would write him letters. I would write him a letter. I'm on the honor roll again. Send it off. In those days, it was a 4-cent stamp, but send it off, and I'd get a letter back. Good job, Annabelle. And so I used to think that the president really was my friend. it was probably his staff. But I just had that feeling that the president is my friend. And in generation to generation to generation, now I'm in the generation of like baby boomers. And they're kind of selfish. And I'm thinking, how did they become so selfish? How did we, I'm in the same generation, how did we become so selfish when I used to think, well, everybody has needs, and we have to have to help one another. And so the older generation helped us, and we're now at a point that we should be helping the younger generation. And I don't see a lot of people my age group that are of that mindset. They're like, okay, they helped me, but I'm not going to help them. I don't understand it.
But there is a path forward then still. Even between ages, even between people who disagree politically, and even in between people who might not have made up their mind and won't make up their mind until they walk into that poll. Is there a path forward? No matter what happens this election, nationally, locally?
Absolutely. You know, in my involvement in local politics, I feel like I'm part of a team. So if our team doesn't win, I'm frustrated, I'm a little down, but you learn from it. You learn what didn't work, you learn what worked, and you go forward and try to win the next time. So.
Seems very cliche, but I do think if people thought about would they say this to the person in front of them, don't say it online. Don't say it. In comments, I see so much hate directed, for example, at our mayor, who is working very hard for the city and is a person who is getting up and going. And when you see such ugly comments, and especially on Facebook, unfortunately, it makes you sad, because I don't think anyone would say the things that they say in these forums, these tweets, these Facebook groups, if I was talking to one of those people.
Probably one of the reasons I don't do social media very much. I like Google because I can look up stuff. It's my dictionary now. But I don't like to go on a chat with somebody or a Facebook with somebody if they're going to tell me that so-and-so and so-and-so, I'm going to trash that person. So that person over there is bad. And I don't like that, so I don't do social media.
We are at 7 o'clock, and I know I promised, so we will wrap it up here. But the last thing I want to ask real quickly, was this helpful in any way to get this group together and have this discussion?
I mean, it was nice to hear different viewpoints and still be civil and, to show that as an example, yes, we can all have opposing viewpoints or different viewpoints and still yet sit in a room together and be civil with each other, and hopefully that's an example.
And agree.
And agree too, yes. I think we probably agreed more than we disagreed if we look back. Yes.
Actually, I think it might even just be a little too short, because there's 6 of us here and there's questions, and an hour goes by real fast.
I was going to say, there's probably a lot more we could have really gotten into. We didn't talk about gender, we didn't talk about age, and we know those are topics that also come up, especially when choosing a presidency. So.
It's amazing how quick this time can go by, though, when we get people together who actually have things to talk about. So,
Right, yeah.
And I was like, by the way, it's okay to say that this wasn't helpful. I'm like, y'all don't have to say yes if you don't want to. Well, I'm sure Evie and I, we both thank you so much for being here. And on behalf of the entire station, we thank you so much for doing this. When we were putting together this political segment that we're doing for the Sunday mornings, some of the things that we're looking at are not just the candidates and the races, but we wanted to hear from people in our community. And we wanted to hear from voters. And like last week, we went and we talked to poll workers about our election integrity. And I'm like, we're not going to hear that from, you know what the national candidates say about that. It's like, let's hear about it from the people that are actually doing it. And we did it. We heard from them in Boone County. We heard from them in Audrain County. And we're a big, mid-Missouri is an interesting place. I'm sure, as you all know, Columbia and Boone County is an interesting place with very different and very dynamic people. But having people like you in it who are willing to come and talk to us is what has made this place feel like home to me. So.
And you guys talked about local. So do you have any issues or concerns when it comes to how local media represents your parties, where you stand, and some of the issues?
I would just love to see more of you at our events. Send somebody to our events, call me, you know, get them coming in. I talked to the Missourian one time, and they said that some of the reporters are a little afraid to go in there, and because some of the Republicans can get a little snippy, but if I'm there, nobody's going to act up. I guarantee it. So call me.
Nobody with a rifle on their hip.
Oh, I don't have a rifle.
Do you feel that some of the more other events are covered from the other party? Is that what you're seeing, or you feel like you're seeing, or
I mean,
just not at all?
Just like when we have our committee meetings, they're open. That was my policy when I was the chair of Boone County Republican Central Committee. The media is welcome. So I know some committees aren't, so that's why I say that. So.
I will say I do have some concern about, like, there's a newspaper, and I won't name the name of which newspaper it is, but there was a case that I tried a couple weeks back that was a very politically charged topic, and there were 15 attorneys on either side. So when I say I tried it, I was one of a very large trial team. And like I was reading the articles every day about what was going on in the trial, and it was very like every night, there would be this is what happened today at the trial, and it was a 2-week-long trial. And the first week, the other side had put on their case, and I was like, this is pretty positive for them. And then I read about our case, and they're like calling our experts idiots and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, this is like very skewed, and like one of them was the former like chairman of psychology at Northwestern University, and they called him like an idiot. And I'm like, this guy is obviously very, like just because you don't agree with him politically doesn't make the other person stupid.
So a local newspaper called, so like a printed newspaper called someone an idiot?
It wasn't verbatim an idiot, but it was like, I'm paraphrasing
Between the lines.
Yeah, you could read between the lines and what they were trying to get at.
He seemed to be an idiot.
I would say very strongly. And like I think it kind of goes to the discussion that we had about like what Annabelle had said earlier with like local news doing a better job of giving just the facts. They were giving just the facts mostly, but it was like very skewed and like, hey, this particular fact is going to make this side seem pretty good, and this particular fact is going to make that side. It's like if you're going to give the facts, I think the complete picture is how you tell the truth. The lie of omission is almost as bad as the all-out lie.
What I would like to see is more candidates showing up and talking for themselves. I was at the League of Women Voters Forum for the general election, and we couldn't even hear from the Boone County Commissioner candidates because none of the Republican candidates came. And I think the perception is from them that the League of Women Voters is a partisan organization when it's not. And I feel like candidates, I got to hear from Bryce at one, and he did an excellent job, and it was wonderful to hear from him what he thought about the issues. And for the people that did show up, it was so great to hear that, but we can't hear it if people don't come. And that's the hard part with these forums. It's like we need to get away from these specialized groups, from Democratic forums, from Republican forums, and have forums that are open to the general public, where all the candidates come and people can hear directly from them, so it doesn't get skewed by writers or reporters or people online.
From them as well.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice if both sides get the same question,
I've
and some hard-hitting
encouraged our
questions too.
candidates to go, but they won't. And, you know, for my money, I'd like to see more Democrats coming to the GOP packeter meetings and talking.
There used to be meetings of the groups where they would talk and have
yeah,
like twice
yeah.
a year they would have like a meeting between the two, and I think that would be
That was
great.
many years ago. I tried to restart that with Bill Clark, but I had some limited success with that. So.
When I was in law school, the Federalist Society is kind of like and you go into law school, I'm sure you know, they're like the conservative leaning like legal organization, and then the American Constitutional Society is the left leaning organization. And we had like every year mixers, like barbecues, we'd co-host speakers, and we'd bring in somebody who was, conservative leaning, they'd bring in some, and like go at it, like have the debate. And that's, I think like what we're kind of all saying here is the debate and just like the straight pure facts, like what do the candidates stand for, that kind of thing, is missing in a lot of situations.
Thank you all so much for being here.
This has been such a pleasure.
Yes, this has
Very
been wonderful, and it's been very insightful to hear from all of you. And I'll be covering a lot of things on the campaign trail. This has been almost refreshing for me. So I do really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come out here, and I appreciate a discussion like this. And this is really what our viewers want to see. And you are the kinds of people that they want to hear from.
I think they need to see normal people.
Yes, yes.